Welcome to this Bridgewater Now update. I'm John Luck. A Bridgewater man has been charged with vandalizing a crosswalk in Plymouth. This crosswalk was painted with rainbow colors to identify Plymouth as an inclusive community representing LGBTQT residents. On October 6, police received a phone call saying a driver was doing a burnout with his truck on Water Street in Plymouth. When officers arrived on scene, they found a 19-year-old male from Bridgewater, and according to reports, he didn't deny the vandalism. The man was charged with vandalizing property, disturbing the peace, and negligent driving. It is worth noting that there have been other incidents like this at that crosswalk in Plymouth, which was painted back on October 1st. As you know by now, fall sports at Bridgewater State University are not playing games out of an abundance of safety for everyone on the field and in the stands. This is potentially more difficult for the senior athletes who may have played their final games at BSU. Field hockey player Megan Welsh, men's soccer player Kevin Roberts, women's soccer head coach Yasmina Carvalho, and football head coach Joe Varia all were featured on the Noontime Sports podcast with Matt Noonan. Coach Carvalho said that there was some anxiety about coming to campus and having no sports taking place.
So from the freshman side perspective on the field, it seems like they're just thankful to be there, because I think there was a lot of anxiety about coming to a college campus and not being able to do what was planned. Some of these freshmen, we've talked to them for over a year or even over 2 years, and they're super excited to come to the school that they chose, and the sport that they want to play, and the coach that they want to play for, and the team that they want to play for. So when they started hearing, oh, we're not going to have a season, we're not even going to train, I think in their brains are like, well, what am I getting myself into? And thankfully, Bridgewater State as a whole was awesome enough to say, listen, we'll keep your athletics going, but we just want you to abide by these rules.
It's definitely been a challenge trying to get stuff done, but the best thing about it, and I think everybody will agree, is that these kids probably couldn't wait to get to practice. They've been in their dorm, they've been Zoom meetings or non-Zoom meetings. They just can't wait to be with their friends and get going. This is a challenge for all of them, no doubt. No season, and they're doing everything they can to stay, enthusiastic about everything.
And that was football head coach Joe Varia, who has about 100 players working out. Obviously, due to guidelines, they can't all work out together, so players would be broken up into groups of about 25 and rotate time slots in the weight room and socially distant football drills. Soccer player Kevin Roberts said that seeing his teammates was a weight taken off his shoulders, a statement that was echoed by senior Megan Walsh, who again is on the field hockey team. The hope for everyone that took part in the interview was to, of course, take the field, but more for seniors to be as hopeful as possible, and a few of the players at the university have said they'll return to their team next year. And this is a great listen on the Noontime Sports podcast. We've had Matt Noonan, who hosts the podcast on the program in the past, and you can listen to the podcast on Spotify, Anchor, and Apple Podcast. And there is a link to the podcast available on bsubears.com, or you can follow at Noontime Sports on Twitter. The election is less than 3 weeks away, but early voting will start here in Bridgewater this weekend. We'll have the hours and safety protocols for early voting coming up on the next update, but I had a chance to talk with Dr. Jason Edwards, who is a professor and the chair of the Department of Communication Studies at BSU. We talked about this election, including voting methods, communication strategies of the campaigns, and potential fatigue of voters. In part one of our conversation, we talk about the first presidential debate and the importance of the individual campaigns and if video conferencing methods could be the future of campaigning. Obviously, up until the beginning of the month, we've been seeing two different campaign styles. The president holding rallies with thousands of people in attendance, while the Democratic nominee, Joe Biden, holding virtual events, holding virtual town halls, and utilizing the video conferencing methods and social media. Could this election change how candidates maybe reach out to people? Do you see this maybe going more towards video conferencing as we go forward here?
No, I really do think that's much more of a function of the situation we're in with the coronavirus and so forth. If all things being equal, I do really think that you'd see Joe Biden going to a lot more rallies, going to a lot, being crisscrossing the United States. Holding, in much larger venues than he certainly is. I think that's still going to be a trope of American politics. But certainly, the COVID-19 has changed the way for a lot of us how we communicate. Just today, when we're holding this interview, the Commission on Presidential Debates was going to argue that the second presidential debate was going to be via virtual town hall. And we haven't had not a virtual debate, we haven't had a debate where we've had candidates that have been separated since the third presidential debate in 1960 with the Kennedy-Nixon debates. Most people don't know that actual third debate actually took place where one candidate, they were 3,000 miles apart actually on opposite coasts participating. So we actually have a precedent for that, but I don't think it's going to be a running trope where we have these kinds of events. I do think it's going to become a more common way for candidates to reach out to their supporters. I certainly see that. But in terms of those large events that get a lot of media attention, I still think you're going to have all kinds of rallies and staged events that get a lot of attention from the media and so forth. And it's just because it gives more access to journalists, media participants, to makes people feel like they're more intimately involved in the campaign than just a Zoom call. And I think a lot of people miss that sense of intimacy that we have because of the coronavirus. And so I think people will actually kind of long for those kinds of debates not those debates, but those kind of rallies, because you can actually see people are cheering, people are excited, people are motivated. And it creates I think a lot of people like that in some respects about American politics.
So I want to bring up the debate. Obviously, a lot of people saw the first presidential debate, and it wasn't really a debate. It turned into a 90-minute shouting match. Does that first debate make these individual campaigns and how the candidates market themselves more important than in years past? Because typically in a debate, you have two people exchanging ideas that are feet apart from each other, as opposed to campaigns when you can go ahead and put your message out there and make sure it's your message individually.
Yeah, I think this debate, just first off, I think most people can conclude that this was one of the worst debates ever, primarily because of the stylistic, things going on. The president interrupting Joe Biden, 140 times, I think was counted by one person. Then also you have, the vice president responding, you're a clown, this person's a clown, will you just shut up, man, that kind of stuff. It kind of really debases any kind of, civil dialogue or any kind of substance that you can get out of those debates. But in doing so, the first debate was probably it was important for both candidates in this sense. One, Joe Biden, has gotten constantly was called out by the Trump-Pence campaign as being slow, sleepy, having dementia, not being on top of his game, and he had to prove that he had a grasp of at least the issues and could he stand toe to toe with Donald Trump with his style and so forth. And Donald Trump, for the last few months has been trailing in almost every single poll. And a lot of people saw this was as a first ditch or maybe even a last ditch effort to save his campaign. And you could certainly say that Biden passed on the first pronouncement. Certainly he had, was there a lot of substance in his answers? Probably not, but part of that was because of the style that was being introduced by the president. And because of that style, a number of, even the president's supporters and advisors could not understand what he was doing. So it probably actually hurt Donald Trump much more than it helped him. I was just reading some analysis today when the editor of the National Review, which is a conservative magazine, is basically asked the question, does Trump really want to win the election? Then you have a problem. When one of your major supporters is actually questioning your ability to want to actually win this election with your style and your bombast and your insults and all of the stuff that goes into what Trump politics, political style, you at least in this point in time, it looks like Donald Trump's campaign is in trouble. Now, of course, 26 days until the election, that's a political lifetime. Anything can happen. And we certainly don't know what's going to happen. So I would say that Trump's certainly not out of this campaign by any means.
And we'll have part 2 of our conversation coming up later on this week. Thanks for watching this update. I'm John Long.